Hello everybody, and a warm welcome to my second Pecha Kucha of the MA series. I'm introducing my BOM project around the topic bridging distance, followed by my project idea generation linked with my MA proposal. I hope you enjoy it. I started out initially considering the title split into two sections, bridging and distance. I noted some immediate thoughts on the two words, then scanned dictionaries and thesauruses. Using the mind map, I then took the key concepts and started to forge links, and the two themes that started to emerge were actual bridges and generations as in families. Well, I am a visual person, so I moved into a mood board using secondary resources from the internet. It was important to me that I started to consider actual physical objects which could be composed into the final outcome, and potentially whether I could actually combine some of my ideas. There's nothing nicer than obtaining your own resources for a project, so I went on two visits. The first was to 3 bridges in my village. One was bridging distance between village and allotments. The next was a farm bridge, bridging distance across farmland. And the final one was an unused railway bridge, actually bridging distance between towns and coastlines. The second visit was to record generations, and I considered the generation gap between my grandmother aged 89 and my own children aged 5 and 6. The bridging distance came through the use of technology, and despite my children being young, they were showing Granny how to use technology. This could be bridging distance between generations. You will have to excuse my quick sketching and scribbles, but I felt it was appropriate to show you my final process before the outcome was created. The last visit's resources really appealed to me, so I considered adding additional features such as lighting for a screen, the viewpoint, and whether I had 2 or 3 people in the final composition. And this is the final outcome, bridging distance between generations. And Granny is set in her ways and preferring to enjoy the black and white photographs of her childhood rather than the fast pace that her grandchildren enjoy today. And colour is starting to seep into her hands as she engages with the device and starts to appreciate the learning. And colour was used on the children to symbolise modern times. So the aims in my MA project proposal is to produce modern and interesting visuals for PSHE lessons in secondary schools to stimulate debate amongst teenagers on matters relating to life. As a teacher, I see no benefits to pupils at all in the staged visuals that you see here from the internet. In need of some inspiration, I decided to visit David Mack's exhibition in Durham called Mack Goes Commando. I hadn't seen Mack's work before, but I was very inspired by his exhibition and the use of collage and photo montage. And I found myself finding many different stories within one piece of work, and I decided to latch on to this idea. This is one of Mack's most known photo montages, and I think you'll agree you can spend many an hour discussing what each character was doing, look at the buildings, the objects and the context. But also within this picture there's a historical link, and I found that quite interesting, and I want to bring historical context into my own pieces. As part of the PSHE programme, we look at healthy eating and obesity. So using obesity as a theme, I borrowed 3 images. One of a kitchen, one of a modern day larger lady drinking fast food products and smoking, and finally historical content was thrown in looking at a Georgian illustrator called Thomas Rowlandson, and added that to the final creation. The juxtapositioning of new versus old really captured my imagination, so here I combined images from the London riots a few years ago with Rowlandson's Georgian London brawl, and although I'm pleased with the photo montage, there is copyright issues and no resources of my own, and that's something that I need to research. Newcastle is the largest city in the northeast, so I took my camera to the streets to capture a range of real life themes. There's drugs, technology use, obesity and poverty. And my theme here was still widespread, so I was aware that I needed to narrow my project down, but the resources gathered on that day were very useful and very enlightening. I went back to the studio to create a piece which reflected much of what I'd looked at before, but without the copyright issue. So here I used acrylic on acetate to overlap the original image, and the theme was ladies and modern day attitudes, and this image was designed to provoke a debate about women's behaviour over the centuries. So this was the turning point in my project. Following a conference I attended in London for PSHE, I was told the aim now is to avoid reciting facts to a class, but provide them with actual life skills. On the tube back, I spotted this industrial mess, but was intrigued. Where did the pipes and wires lead? Homes, businesses, what people were linked? This was good narrative. Still in London, I visited the V&A Museum. I had intended to look at Rawlinson's work, but instead I looked at the missing narrative idea. A staircase without a floor, a window frame without a home, a lady asleep. What was she doing? The idea was now to critically think, use the evidence and complete the story. I felt this idea would generate much interest in the classroom. I was still to get a focus in my research, so I attended the Durham Miners Gala, which is an annual working class celebration. All the mines are closed now, but the effects of this industry can still be felt today in the northeast of England. And so from gathering the resources on that day, I finally had a title: Unemployment in Durham Coal Mining Communities and the Effects. These photo montages were created using the resources I'd obtained from the gala, plus based around the unemployment theme and the effects on communities. There are two versions. The second version is removing some of the physical narrative but keeping the ghostly shape. Again, these images are to be unpicked through discussion using the collection of stories presented, like David Mack's work. Unemployment can also bring new challenges, so I'm also considering the effects on the community from buildings and neglect to cheaper methods of living, such as fast food. With this piece, I've removed some physical narrative again from my photography, but replaced the sauce bottles with symbolic elements. Now, symbolism is certainly something I would like to explore. So, where am I now in my project? Well, I've considered my methodology and I intend to use experimental studies and surveys on the community of Sacriston in Durham, which was once a thriving coal mining village, to gather vital local perspective and experiences, and this is where I intend to develop my MA project.